Hey, good morning, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
Hi, John. Yeah, we can hear you okay.
Okay, awesome. Great. Thank you for having me, and I'm happy to be here. It's been fun listening to all the other speakers this morning. And I do have a lot of slides, so I'll try to go through them very quickly, because as we said, we only have 20 minutes to get through all this. So my topic today is about data quality reporting. Why it is okay to shift right as part of your strategy, and I highlight the part. So hopefully we can get some good information out of this today that is easily usable and immediately impactful to your business. I'll skip over this part. I've been doing this for a long time, mostly engineering and QA management for most of my career. I currently work for a services company, and I do like to blog a little bit on the side when I get a chance. So what we're going to cover today, I'm going to talk a little bit about the background of our systems and the challenges and risks, because it kind of gives a good segue into why we chose one specific mitigation strategy. And I think, again, it's one that's very, very useful, and we don't always think about it when we're doing quality assurance. And then I'll actually walk through some real cases. So as I said, I've got a lot of slides. I'm going to try to go through this very quickly. Just to give you a little bit of background on our systems, I came to Beacon Street. Really, I came as part of just part of a tech organization for a company. And we built the system from 2014 to 2016. And then from 16 to 18, we moved to a multi-tenant system where we basically had to support multiple affiliates, so multiple companies kind of doing the same thing. But we didn't actually add QA until we became kind of a separate services company, an LLC. And so when you look at it, these systems were built over the course of about 5 or 6 years, but we didn't actually build a formal QA team until last year. And so basically, from a QA perspective, we were kind of behind the times. So there was a lot of catching up that we had to do. So when we look at our technical architecture, this is just an overview. We have different technologies. We're pretty much all cloud-based in terms of Salesforce and AWS, multiple databases, and multiple reporting tools. So very varied architecture. And what Beacon Street does is we basically are the services company that supports subscription-based publication businesses, usually around financial information and software. So we do a lot of work around email, CRM, billing systems, and then also the fulfillment. So the emails and the websites are around fulfilling the content for these businesses. And so when I came on, and initially I was part of the engineering team, so I was managing the engineering and the software team, building the websites, building the core systems, our CRM and billing systems. And then took over basically building this QA team, because I had experience with QA from long before. So the charter was basically to create a team that was responsible for testing and strategy around quality, documenting our system functionality, which we hadn't really done formally in any way other than wiki pages, establish regression and smoke tests, focus on automation, and really assess and report on quality. Right, that's at the end of the day, that's probably the most important thing. So the first thing we did is we took some SDETs and we built, typical automation framework. This is the kind of stuff that most automation teams will do, right? So Selenium, Page Object Model, BDD, Maven, TestNG. We use Cucumber, and we do use Rest Assured. I know that came up in the last session about API testing. Our API testing automation is all done through Rest Assured libraries, and it works very well. And my team wasn't very large. We probably have 9 to 11 developers at this point. I have 3 QA, I have 1 manual QA, and then 2 SDETs that focus on the framework. And where we are after about a year is we're about 90% coverage on our manual test cases, and we're about 55% coverage on our automation. We're doing pretty well, but we got a ways to go. So when we looked at the challenges of our systems, Salesforce, we're a mix of monolithic and microservices, a lot of interconnected technologies, and obviously AWS, we do a lot of serverless. So we do Lambdas, step functions, data streams. One of the challenges we have is we have over 50 batch jobs and over 20 Java jobs. And testing in a batch mode has its challenges. And so when you look at kind of where we are. We're very job and batch heavy. We use serverless, which is easy to maintain in terms of code, but it's a little bit harder to test because you really have to test those end-to-end processes, and that's not always an easy thing to do. The other challenges we had in our system are environments. So we have a production environment, obviously, and we have a test environment, but that test environment we actually share with development. So we don't really have a true clean path from local to development to test to staging to production. We're really kind of sharing all that in our test environment. And we also have a lot of complexity. So, a system being maybe 6 years old, we still have a lot of legacy debt that we're trying to move to microservices. We have a lot of third-party integrations. So the complexity of our systems is fairly high. So again, we step on each other's toes. We break a lot in our environments. So these are some of the challenges that we have. So when I looked at the test strategy, again, one of the big things was automate. That was huge. Build in our CI/CD, well, at least the CI part of it. Have greater confidence in our releases, reduce risks, harden our processes, improve data management, and drive a quality ownership mentality across the technology organization. The biggest thing here is, a huge concern for our customers, our affiliate customers, was they just wanted confidence in the releases. So some of the considerations, how can we as a QA team get started quickly? How can we catch up with development? Because again, we were building our team 5-6 years after we'd already built the system. And how can we actually show an impact? How can we show QA is valuable to our team? So we kind of looked at our plan and we said, well, short-term and immediate tactics, first of all, we think what QA is, how do we increase the number of tests that we can run? How can we increase automation coverage? That's always a goal. That's always important. How can we build it into CI/CD? Again, we're at 55% automation. We're probably going to get to 80%, but that's still going to take us the rest of this year. So we want to do that. It's important to do that, but it definitely takes time. But then we started thinking, well, maybe we can do a little bit of focus on analyzing production. It doesn't always have to be about executing test cases in the test environment. And again, our test environment is shared with dev. We step on each other's toes. It makes things a little more difficult. What can we do to maybe shift to production and do a little bit of quality there? That was kind of our plan. And if we did that, we figured we could do that in a matter of a few weeks, not months. So I just want to share this chart with you real quick. You've probably seen this before, but when we talk about a quality mindset, it's really a continuum, right? You have your engineering and your upstream activities of automation, CI/CD, infrastructure, TDD, all of that is your upstream. That's early in the process. And then downstream, you have your quality control. So this is after everything's been done. You're kind of looking at production. You're finding issues in production. That's what we call shifting right, or that's the downstream activities. And if you go back to this bullet, you remember the biggest thing our customers wanted from QA was they wanted greater confidence in our releases, okay? And that's a huge thing. They just wanted to trust the data. So just remember that, trust the data. And that was kind of our aha moment. We said, well, given our situation where we can't automate everything, it's taking time to automate, we're sharing an environment, we have complex systems, we can't test everything. Maybe what we can do is we can actually shift some focus downstream and actually start assessing our data. And that was a huge aha moment for us. And again, when you look at the shifting left, what we really want to do most of the time in QA, especially in automation, is shift left. It's less costly. It gets quality inserted into the process earlier. But shifting right, there is an ability to do that. It's just sometimes more costly to do so. So the caveat is we do want to always shift left when we can. We want to get involved in those engineering processes and tasks, but we can shift right, and it's not an either or proposition. It's not like you have to do one or the other. And that's why I say it's important to look at shifting right as part of your strategy, not as your strategy. So when you look at our team, this is pretty much a typical breakdown, I think, but we're about 20% on the upstream, we're about 70% testing, and I would say we're about 10% of what we call the inspection phase, or looking at production data. And this is what I also consider beyond test case execution. This is more than just running automation tests. So what does it look like? What do we do? So we ask questions like, for customer service, let's say a refund comes in and they get a credit, did we update the customer's credit balance correctly? These are the kind of questions they ask. When we look at batch jobs, we look at things like, customer had a failed credit card payment, but then they came back and paid. Did we give them access back to the website? These are kind of the business questions that we ask. And then for shifting right, our solution, we implemented what we call data quality reporting, so DQR. So our approach, so this is the one specific thing that we did that I want to really focus on today, which is data quality reporting, how it fits into your strategy and what that looks like. And so we're going to spend the rest of the time, we got about 9 minutes, 8 minutes. We're going to talk about what that looks like, how you implement it, and exactly some specific examples to kind of give you a feel for how that works. So data quality reporting is really, it's just executing reports and queries against your production data. If you have a data warehouse, you have access to that data. What you're really doing is you're looking at the data in production, you're building these queries and reports around business concepts and use cases, and you're looking to see if those end results in production are what you expected, okay? We get input from all of our SMEs. We get them from development, from QA, from product management, from our executive stakeholders, our customer service, our telesales. Everybody has input to those business use cases. And when we first rolled this out, we did about 30 reports in the course of about a month. And just those 30 reports alone, we were alerted to and found 20 plus issues in production that we had to go back and look at our processes and fix those because we had issues. Now, one caveat here again is this approach, it really depends on the state of your data warehouse and your master data management. So if you do have good data in production that you can access and do these queries on, that's huge. If you don't, it might be a little more difficult for you to implement your DQR. So in our model, we have these cloud-based systems, Salesforce, Azure, we have web apps, we have all sorts of data coming in from our affiliates, we're on AWS. So really we kind of dump all that into a master data management system in Snowflake, all the raw data, and then I'm able to basically build my queries off of that. So we're in a good place to implement the solution, maybe harder for others. And the tool of choice, it's important to know that whatever tools you have, you can probably work into the solution. But in our case, we use Looker. Looker is a BI software tool, a lot of ad hoc reporting, advanced features and scheduled reports, APIs galore. We can do all sorts of API reporting out of it. But it's really similar to Business Objects or Domo or Click or Tableau. So really any of those solutions will work for you. This is just to show you an example of a Looker report. One other thing that I'll point out, if you have a good master data management system, you can dump all your data there, not just your system data, your customer data, but your internal data too. So all of our automation information and results, our daily results, all that goes into Snowflake as well. And we actually use Looker to manage and report on our own internal processes. So we use it across the board. And with Looker, again, you've got basically views, you've got sources, you've got filters, you've got visualization. So again, pretty typical reporting tool. So let me walk you through the steps real quick. So step one in DQR, identify areas of concern and priorities. That was the biggest thing off the bat, is what are we trying to assess? What are the most important things for us? Things for us would be like payments, refunds. Those are critical aspects of our business. Define your data results and sorry, let me go back. Define your data results and all right, we skipped that. Sorry about that. Let me go back one here. Sorry about that. Define your data rules and queries. And document these as test cases. So we actually treat our data quality reporting just like we do a test case. We document in our test case system. We use TestRail. It doesn't really matter what you use as your test case management system, but at least have one. TestRail is pretty inexpensive and it's good with integrations to Jira and other tools as well. Step two is you go and you build your reports, you build your queries, you test your reports, and then what we did is most of these are scheduled as alerts. So what we're really doing is we're building queries to look for things that are kind of exceptions to the rule. And if those reports and queries identify an exception to the rule, then we get an alert through a report that says, hey, we think something's going on. So we're not actually running reports and looking at them every day. We're really only looking at these queries and reports if it's alerted to an exception to the rule. And that's a pretty important key to managing this. This just shows you what a looker folder looks like. But let me spend the last 5 minutes, because that's all we've got, talking about use cases, okay? And hopefully this makes a lot of sense to folks. So use case one is we have payment failures, and when we have a payment failure, we should remove access for the customer for the content that we provide. And when we look at something like our payment flow, we generate an invoice here, we then post that invoice, then we have a payment job that goes through and does a whole bunch of assessing of the customer information. So things like credit card, payment type, is it a maintenance fee or renewal? Are they on installment? Do they have credits? Do they have existing balances? There's a whole bunch of information that goes through. In each one of these processes, we actually test in QA, but testing the entire process in a regression test is pretty arduous. And if you see here, the number of variations you would have just on these conditions alone, you know, dozens and dozens of test cases for that. Then we might have a payment error here, and then we have a status job that runs and it does certain things. You know, may put the invoice into billing suspend, and then we might remove access for the customer. So there's a lot to test here. So what we did is we built the data quality report, and we said, well, let's make it simple. Let's look in production and let's run a query and see, are there payments in the last 30 days where the subscription stays active, but the customer basically, you know, had a failed payment, but we gave them access, continued access. That's really what the query is. So we ran a couple queries. We have an installment query and a non-installment query, because there's kind of two approaches to this. And we basically just build a filter. And the filter is looking at these conditions in production, looking at the data, and it will alert us and tell us if there's a abnormal result, basically. And so we basically schedule the report. You can see here, we only want to be notified if there are results. So we're looking for the exceptions, and then if we get a result, we know there's an issue. So here's a case where we had 2 reports come back, and they were still in active status even though there were payment errors. And now we can actually go and look at the data and figure out whether it was a process issue, a timing issue, no issue. But this will identify errors in the process that we can then go back and look at our test cases and try to rectify those. And again, this is a scheduled job. Second use case is kind of the opposite. So let's say we have a payment success and we took away access from the customer. Let's say we need to restore access to the website for that customer. So that's test case 2. It's a similar sort of data quality report, but it's kind of the inverse. We're looking for cases where they made a payment, but we're still suspending the customer's subscription. Again, we create 2 queries for this. And in this case, there were no results. We didn't get alerted, so therefore there's nothing to investigate, and we know that our data quality is pretty clean. And then our third issue, or our third use case is really, this is a more complex scenario. So we basically have multiple cloud-based systems. So we have our order forms, we have our cloud-based system of Zuora and Salesforce, we run some jobs. And if you look at this, sequence diagram, you know, some of these things like Zuora and Salesforce, we don't control those processes. And so things like generating invoice, syncing invoices, these asterisks basically point out processes that we don't control. So we don't have any control, no way to really test this easily because we don't have insights to these processes. But we typically know at point 1 and point 2 in the process, we see some failures. We know that there's some things that can happen. So what we did is we said, well, looking at the sequence diagram, let's actually put an alert on the data and the quality of the data at this point in time so that we can actually get an alert daily if we know that there might be an issue with the process. And this will happen before we get to the end of the processes, which is the reporting to customers and things like that. So again, we build another DQR. And in this case, we're looking for like failed syncs. And so we basically build the report. Thing about Looker that's nice is you can do customized SQL, so you can actually build in more customized SQL statements, can get more complex. And again, this alert is not happening. There's no results. We're not going to get alerted if there's no issues. So on a daily basis, we're hoping that we get either very few or no reports at all to identify problems in the process. So that's what data quality reporting is doing for us. And there's more we can do. We can look for missing data, potential fraud, failed data streams and processes. It's a pretty powerful tool on your production data. So we're out of time, so let me go really quickly through the summary. The gist of this, I think, is sometimes we look at quality control as a bad word for QA, for testing. I don't think quality control is a bad word. I think it's actually pretty important because executives will focus on the data, and as QA, I think we should also focus on the data. It's not just running tests in the test environment. Where you can't control areas in the early stages, so we're talking about, you know, upstream, we can shift to the right, we can look downstream, and we can actually assess our data to help us with our QA processes. And even though it's a little costlier, again, making this part of your strategy, I think, is an important thing to do as part of QA. We can provide customers with confidence in our data, and it's a quick win. And that's hugely important. It's easy to write queries on production data to find problems and then kind of work back and look at your processes to make sure you're covering the right things. Leverage the tools you have and focus some time on data quality, not just test case execution, right? Think beyond just running test cases. Think of assessing data as part of your job. So thank you for your time. We're out. Here's some contact information. And I think we're ready for questions. Okay, so top questions, let's see. So question one, enlighten more on reducing the test data preparation time. Reducing the test data preparation. I'm not sure I fully understand the question on that one. You know, what we really talked about here, we're not really talking about test data and how we're managing test data in the test environment. We're really talking about how good is your production data and the access to that production data where you can actually perform queries. Thankfully, we have a very good BI team that manages and structures our data in an easily accessible way. We didn't have that before, honestly. About 2 years ago, we restructured all of our data in our systems, and it was very difficult to get to the data we needed because it was in multiple places. So we're very fortunate to have a good BI team that's given us access to that production data. On the test side, yeah, we need to do a little more work on our test environment, and that's a whole nother topic to address. Next question is, why would we let build proceed on the production if the DRQ is reporting problems? Yeah, and that's it. I mean, I think with testing, what we find is, you know, we don't know what we don't know. So what we found is that as much as we can build test cases and run our test execution in the test environment, we're going to miss some stuff. We don't always know what it is we're looking for, but we do know at the end of the day what the business is looking for and what should be the pristine state of the data. And that's what we're really looking at. We're looking at that to say, okay, where have we missed some things in tests? Once we identify those through data quality reporting on our production data, then we go back and we basically do retrospectives and we're like, okay, how did we miss this? What is not working? And then we build that into our processes so that we can actually have better test case automation and execution in our test environment. And therefore, we see less and less of these data quality reporting issues. And I will say that we started with about 30 reports. We're up to about 62 reports in our production database and our production environment. But we see very, very few alerts now. We fixed most of the issues. We've identified those. And so our actual alerting in production is very, very low. Some days we don't see any. What is the best strategy for documenting existing system functionality? Wow, that's a good question. we did a lot of that. So fortunately, we had a lot of smart people on our team that knew the system, and we had them basically help us provide the initial set of test cases for our test case repository when we started to build those out. We had a lot of Confluence or wiki pages that we could leverage and look at those, but part of it too is, as a tester, you just kind of go through and test the system and you figure things out and you document as you go. So I think it's a combination of existing documentation, existing SMEs that provide insight into what you need to do, and part of it is just testing yourself and figuring it out and documenting as you go. What actions would you take once DRQ reports the problem? Do you roll back the release build? We don't normally roll back. We generally do hot fixes. So we can roll back, and we do roll back on occasion. But generally we get alerted. We use VictorOps as our reporting tool for that. We will get alerted. All of these data quality reports, or most of them, are tied into VictorOps. So we actually get a report. It identifies a problem. We get a page. We go in, we look at it, and if it's a real important problem, we'll do usually a hot fix, and then we'll work backwards and try to figure out what the root cause of the issue is. So that's generally how we handle that. How prod support benefit of DQR? Not sure what that question means. How prod support benefit of DQR? Yeah, I'm not exactly sure what the question is there, but yeah, I don't know how to answer that question. That's all I've got, and again, thank you for listening. Again, I hope this is basically it's an insight to not ignoring the ability to shift right when it's necessary. And I think it's always a little bit necessary when you're talking about data and trust and confidence in the data itself. So again, I hope people understand that. So how do you run data quality reporting on actual prod OLTP? OLT, I'm not sure what's the acronym OLTP. Report. I'm not sure again the question there, but basically what we do again is we have a set of data in our Snowflake database, which is really raw data, and we basically build Looker reports. Looker has the ability to, like any other reporting tool, use views. So we have these views and these explorers that sit between the reporting tool and the data. We work with our BI team to come up with the set of views that we need, and then we basically build those Looker reports to access that data, that view, which is against the production raw data. So, you know, we're basically running reports against real production data, and that's how we do it.
Thank you, John, for sharing your insights. So
great, thank you for your time.